Welcome,
we
everybody.
are live.
Sorry, it looks like my computer had froze. It wouldn't be college football without a little bit of a glitch, but I want to welcome everybody to the college football betting Q&A presented by BetMGM Sportsbooks. I'm here with Vaughn Dalzell and Eric Froton, and throughout the programming, I want you guys to make sure you guys are asking questions in the chat. We're going to do our best to answer them throughout. I want to start this topic off. My first topic, I'm going to change. So last night, Stribling from Oklahoma State did not play, but the sports books actually grade him as playing because the NCAA made an error and they gave the catch to him, who's number 88, instead of number 80, who caught the pass. What do you guys do as a sports bettor? I'm asking you guys, what do you guys typically do to kind of fight this? You reach out to support and they say there's nothing we can do about it,
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have to reach out to support. Sometimes they got rules against it. We were joking pregame how I had Marlins versus Mets about a week ago, and that game got suspended in the top of the ninth when the Marlins took the lead. I had a live money line bet, and they graded it as a loss because the Mets didn't have a chance to come back. But if you fight hard enough, they will give you your money back, whether it's a bonus bet or a void most times, often not. And especially people like Brad who get to fight for the people and post about it. That also helps situations too. So, always continue to fight that.
With props, I'll take two different avenues. One, you automatically go over to PFF or a similar, site. Maybe you have SIS data that lists specifically the snaps per game for each player. So you can at least use that and say, hey, look, here's PFF. This is charted. Also, I'll even go to the game once it's posted on YouTube, since a lot of them, you'll get those quick 25-minute cuts after the games are done. You'll get them that night or even, definitely by Sunday. In fact, an incredible YouTube channel is Matthew Loves Ball. That man is a king. We all owe him a debt of gratitude because he puts out more games than you can even keep up with. And I literally just live on his YouTube channel on Mondays because I try to make sure I get all the games. I watch as many games as I possibly can, and that is an invaluable resource. So I'll go through those YouTube games and take a screenshot of the player if I can get it. Usually can at least get like the number and send it in addition to the PFF data. So with the player prop stuff, there's usually ways that you can make sure if they're out there, you can prove it. If they're not out there, well, it would be on PFF. So that's typically how I'll go about it.
Yeah, and Eric, you've made me go on these different websites as well last year and send in stuff on your behalf too. And it's worked out when you bring up those different websites that you all named and places to look for. My topic I want to hit on today, a little more interesting maybe for the guys that are covering the top 10 and teams that can make the college football playoff, maybe not props as much, but are we overreacting to USC the past 2 weeks at all? Playing pretty close games. Obviously, Deion Sanders probably could have possibly stole one against USC, but his play calling on that last drive was atrocious. He looked like Matt Canada. Shout out to all the Steelers fans. But the Trojans are now number 9 and dropped 4 spots the last 2 weeks. Are they still a top 5 team in your guys' opinions, or that defense just not working?
I had them at 6 or 7, if I remember correctly, in my top 25. And I don't think they'll win a national championship, but I don't think they should have been dropped. It kind of reminds me of when Alabama played Florida 2 seasons ago, and they were playing. At no point did I ever think that Alabama was going to lose that game. There was no point that I was going to ever think that USC was going to lose that game. A little tough, in my opinion, for them to drop again last week.
With me, as far as topics go, 2 things. One, I have to say, I was walking around Boston and the New England area over the course of the past couple of days, doing a little bit of sightseeing and rubbernecking since it is peak foliage season. And, my hair whipping around. I was like, man, do I need a haircut? Bless Brad Thomas. I went and saw that incredible video he put out walking his beautiful dog, seeing that flair, seeing the hair he's got bumping. He's even got the bandana. As soon as I saw Brad, I was like, no haircut. No way. I can't look too corporate with these 2 handsome fellas right here next to me. That being said, all kidding aside, I wanted to kind of get into you guys some changes we've seen in terms of the in-person betting marketplace, specifically DraftKings, the brick and mortar stuff. They are not allowing you to bet these valuable player props that I'm putting out until about 2 p.m. EST. On Fridays. That is a sea change from what we've been seeing before. Yeah. Usually you get those out on Wednesdays, certainly on Thursday, but never are you sitting here at sitting at a kiosk at 2 p.m. waiting for those to come out. You are able to get these in if you're betting on the app because they can track you through the apps. And what DraftKings wants to do is they want to see if you're putting in the player props that we're doing because they know that they're getting destroyed on them, especially in person, because they can't account for what is happening at those kiosks. So just be aware. If you're looking to get down more, if you're really big on something, any particular player prop bet that you might hear, anything like that, you see one of my columns, you see some of the other great stuff that's out there, you're going to have to make sure that you account for that. And if you're doing too much on one particular account, on one particular, through the app, they're going to track you. You have to have alternate options because they're getting killed on these college player props and they're trying to mitigate those damages. And I'm here to make sure they don't.
Hey, let's get into the games. The game that I'm actually most excited about, Oklahoma at versus Texas. Texas a 5-point favorite, total set at 65.5. The Red River Showdown, Red River rivalry, the shootout. Even my Amazon Alexa is excited. She's excited about the game. She's talking in the back. I'm going to kick things off. This is my favorite bet of the weekend. I'm taking Texas -5. You can get some -4.5s out there. If before the game kicks off that we get to the 4 number, I'm going to unload on -190, -190 on the money line for Texas. Sure. Let's talk about the two teams. We have Dylan Gabriel, who is playing lights out, one of the highest QBRs in college football. We have Quinn Ewers, who's playing pretty good. Not asked to have to do too much because against Alabama, they made Alabama secondary look kind of weak. And then they've been running the ball with supreme effectiveness. Brent Venables talks about early down success, how they perform in first and second down. They've done well on the defensive side of the ball. 11th so far this season. Holy crap. Cole Palmer just scored for Chelsea at +260. First goal for Chelsea since coming over. Wow. Thank you for the cash. Anyways, but on offense, the early down success rate's pretty bad. Not pretty bad, but pretty bad for Brent Venables standards. 42nd in the country, where Texas is actually really, really good in stopping first and second downs for the opposing team. Brent Venables said it himself. That is how you win games. And that is going to determine if your team's going to have success in the game or not. I'm generally just taking what Brent Venables is saying as his success barometer, and I'm using that as my inclination of who's going to win and who's going to cover. I'm taking Texas. Another one that I like in this game, I like Dylan Gabriel completions. When you take Dylan Gabriel completions, you're going to have to take them on the alternates, basically like sleeper play, underdog, different books like that. I had to put this on there because I do have a solid following who plays that a lot. Dylan Gabriel should probably hit this number. I have about 24 to 25 completions in this game.
Yeah, speaking of Dylan Gabriel and just the completions with you, past 3 games, he's gone 28, 26, 26, and the only 2 times before that, he didn't even need 19. To play. Yeah, well, they were dominating Arkansas State 73-0. Do you really need to take the sports car out of the barn at that point? No, he was on ice in the third quarter. And then SMU was 28-11. It was just a kind of a slog where they just ran the ball. That was the Tyree Walker show, and that was the end of the Tyree Walker show. Yeah. From that point forward. So I'm in, and to kind of piggyback on that too, you look at his line. Started at around 266.5. You can find it at. I've seen it at 270, somewhere in that range. Obviously, you get it as low as you possibly can, given the books that are available to you. But there's also the alt lines too, and this is something that we really haven't had the chance to kind of mess with up until this point. But luckily, they're starting to put those out. And I went 4 for 5 last week on the +300 alt lines that I gave out in the column in the show, and one of them was Dylan Gabriel, who went for 322. Recommended a 300 plus, and that was a +300. This one at 325 alt line, you're at +310 here. Red River Showdown, as discussed. I think we're going to get a very competitive game where these two teams do not mess around when it's time to go. So I'm going to back that as well. Something to be aware of with the alt lines.
I'm going to disagree with both you guys and say it's going to be a closer, low-scoring game, and both teams are going to focus on defense and running the football. And it's not what we're used to. It's a new generation. But I also think that both teams have had pretty good defensive numbers all season, maybe underrated in that sense, especially Oklahoma on the defensive end. I know Brad looks into a lot of the havoc ratings and edges, and I think Oklahoma matches up fairly well. But, of course, the competition aspect, they haven't played as good of teams as Texas has so far. So that's obviously a big concern. But I do lean the under here with the new clock rules too. the game could slow down in some ways. And I guess since we're getting into best bets and other things early, I'll give out a money line sprinkle. But I'm playing Oklahoma. I think Boomer Sooner Nation's going to be there. And 49-0 last year getting smacked up. Bijan Robinson's no longer in town. Oklahoma is going to be coming pretty hungry. They did win 4 straight before that too. And Brad, as we didn't know the top of the show, which we usually do, most bet team today, Texas, minus 5.5 in almost every sports book. And 2 of the biggest, my personal favorite fades on X are on Texas. Are you nervous?
Fair. I'm not nervous. I don't really get nervous about spots like this because I feel like I'm unbiased and the numbers correlate. When it's like, I feel kind of sketchy about it. And then I'm like, oh God, now a bunch of people are riding on it. I will say this, with this game, I actually do like your under. Would I ever play it? I don't know if I have enough guts, but both teams are going to try to establish dominance on the ground and establish the run and win in the trenches early. I don't know if I want to. I think that's probably what it is, just as a bettor who's going to be having fun watching the game. Yeah. But I don't have any player props outside of Gabriel either. So
honestly, I don't know if I want to go to the window with like a full unit on the under. It might be a half unit play because I actually don't have any noon plays today. The sprinkle's the only thing I have. So as we go on, I may be playing the under, especially if the number moves down a little bit. But I thought there's a question in the chat for both you guys. We got it from Connor here about Dylan Gabriel's attempts, over 34.5 attempts. Do you guys like that?
He went 39 last game against Iowa State. Obviously the script was 50 points they scored, so they were gassing it up. But on the other side of the coin, 2 weeks beforehand against Cincinnati, 38. And that was only a 20-6 game.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you delineate between what teams do in the non-con is not the same that they do in the conference. And when they're playing Arkansas State, SMU, Tulsa in non-con play, he didn't go over 34 attempts in those games. But once you got into Big 12 play, okay, it's showtime. I do like that over for the 34.5.
I agree.
Good call by Schrank too on the chat. It's actually plus 360 for the cannon. Wow. At a boy cannon. Nice. Plus 360 on DK for that 325 plus on Gabriel. So big ups on that. It's actually gone up in our favor if we want to go nuclear and fade Vaughn.
Let's ride. The next exciting game, God, man, this morning slate's good. Number 23, LSU is a 5.5-point favorite. Some lines at 6 at Missouri. Number 21, Missouri. Total set at 64.5. Okay, so my plays here, the lines have moved. This is obviously a reason to follow all of us on our X accounts, which I'll give the accounts in a little bit. But I took Luther Burden over 102. I took Neighbors at 86.5. Literally, the line didn't even last like 30 minutes, 20 minutes for me to even write up a tweet. I was trying to drop my tweet at the same time as my 1 p.m. show. And by then it was 98.5. So there's nothing more that you could do with these lines. I still like it at 98. I don't love it at 103. I've seen it some places. It's not because it's a bad line. He won't get over 100. It's just you're literally sucking all the value out, going from 87, needing 87 yards to needing 84 yards. But listen, both of these secondaries, LSU secondaries is terrible. Missouri's just bad against explosive plays. So I think we'll see that option there. I did take another line that I took for anybody who's interested. I took Jaden Daniels, 56.5. Obviously, that one's way gone too. I did tweet that out though. So I'm gonna kick it over to you guys for plays. I'm sorry I don't have much to offer in terms of getting to the window right now.
Oh my gosh, how dare you, Brad? That being said, with this team, what I want to talk about is Missouri, and a very kind of an under the radar move for this offseason. They hired a new offensive coordinator. Eli Drinkwitz. It was clear that offense last year was not getting the job done. Brought in Kirby Moore from Fresno State, who was the OC at Fresno State for the previous 2 years heading in this season, and was the understudy and the OC for Kalen DeBoer before he went off to Washington. So he comes from the Kalen DeBoer tree. Kalen left last season. He stuck at Fresno State, continued with Jake Haener and Nico Remigio, and that offense did not fall off at all after, a legitimate, we all know Kalen DeBoer is a genius now, but he's off that coaching tree and coming in here in Missouri, even though you're not getting the publicity, Missouri has been nuclear when it comes to their passing attack. Brady Cook was, in a 50-50 situation with Jake Garcia coming into the year, a QB battle. Coaching changes mean so much in college football. It's different than the pros.
Yes.
You get the new coach and a new system comes in, and that guy has the kind of caliber of, offense that he's pitching as we're getting out of Kirby Moore, and it has changed the entire dynamic of this offense. You cannot take an under in this wide receiver core. Theo Weiss is coming up. A Oklahoma transfer, he comes in. Ohio State transfer, Mookie Cooper comes in. He did nothing last year. He's been awesome. He's cleared his lines 40.5 each of the past 3 games.
Yep.
I obviously, if anybody read my column, which you should, Brady Cook was my right out of the gate. I saw that first column said, we need to get this in, because his alt line was absolutely shameful. It was 325 plus as a plus 400, plus 390. All right. That has gone up since that line to 276.5. We could have got it around that 260 mark before all this happened. I don't think you can take an under on this passing attack. I even would recommend, we're at the point, I haven't done it all season. We're looking at a blanket over for everything Missouri passing attack oriented against one of the truly elite, pathetic defenses when it comes to passing. LSU last week, over 100 points, scored 104. Right? Again, with LSU versus Ole Miss, Jackson Dart looked like, Jackson Unitas. Unbelievable. I am all about this game. Cook, Luther Burden, as you said, he's at 102.5. That's a value. Weiss, Cooper, all of them. Anything you can get, you blanket it, and you're going to come out on top.
I like that a lot. I will say I think there's a bit of an overreaction a little bit to LSU losing last week. We did say Ole Miss has a good chance to steal that game there and potentially end LSU's season. And I don't think that the Tigers is going to quit. Missouri's been super impressive for sure. Since Kansas State, they beat them. That's a game we like Missouri in. Since then, they haven't been ultra impressive in my opinion, but they haven't played anybody. So this game, I think the talent level will show up. A lean of mine is LSU, but all I've seen from experts and the public is Missouri and the over in this game. I can't really disagree with the over because, as you guys both stated, the defenses are phenomenal at allowing explosive plays. They're great matchups for both passing attacks, and I think we see that transpire here. But I still think LSU is where Missouri is trying to scratch and climb to. And I don't think LSU is just going to quit on their season here. They still have a lot to play for. So I lean LSU, not enough to get me to the window. I like the Oklahoma-Texas under a little bit more. Brad, what are you thinking about Kentucky and Georgia? Or Kentucky and Georgia.
Dude, I'm going under here. I do love Georgia minus 14 as well. But I think the smarter play in an under game is not taking a team to need to cover more than 2 touchdowns. Since 2000, the last time they've hit more than 48 points was 2019. Here's an interesting one. For anybody who doesn't know this statistic, I think it's a pretty fun one to start looking at. You can find it on College Football Fangraphs. Parker Fleming on Twitter does a good job of putting them all together, so you don't even need to pull the data. But if you want to do it before he has the time, rush rate over expected basically means, did you run the ball more often compared to the average team? Georgia, 18th in the country. Kentucky, 39th in the country. Basically what means these teams would much rather run the ball than throw the ball. And with Kentucky, we know that their game plan is going to be able to just going to slow the game down and limit the amount of possessions Georgia has. I'm in love with this under. I'm in love with Georgia. I stayed away from props. I know Eric will probably have a few to give out, but I don't want to root for no points. I should have been at the game. I had to stay here because Mama Thomas is pregnant. Didn't want to leave her here, but this should be an exciting game if you like good defense and good tactical running.
Yeah, and I say that Kentucky last week, we talked about them because we expected them to beat Florida. And speaking of the overreactions a little bit on Florida, how they beat Tennessee, then they went on the road to Kentucky and lost. You can't expect these teams to do as well when they're traveling back and forth. So I do think this is going to be a tough game, a road game here for Kentucky. And they live off explosive plays. Georgia's defense, I think, will tighten up here a little bit. But I'll give a little Mama Thomas preview because I think she's going to go 1-0 officially on our show, and she's going to beat Eric later. So everyone watching, you don't want to miss that.
Yes, that's gonna be great.
Well, I mean, come on now. We'll see. I got a lot of respect for Mama Thomas, of course. Everybody knows that. That being said, with the Georgia and Kentucky game, I do have one, little lean. I will say, first off, if you have a Prize Picks account, right now, as we stand, they have a reduced prop on Carson Beck's passing yards line. He's over 270 in most of the places I'm seeing, but they have it at 230.5 as a reduced line where you can pair it with something else. So I would recommend going over there and taking some of that, and pick whichever one of these plays you see and throw it together. So that's first of all. Second, Lad McConkey's finally back. The wee lad. I've been waiting for him to come back all season. He got a ton of buzz once the Draftniks started watching his tape after the last season, realizing this guy just gets open, and not just open, but he was such an indelible part of that offense all season long last year. The only time he was really would get in trouble was when he was hurt. And you look at just game after game, he's getting 6, 9, 6, 6, 7, 8. He is an indelible part of that offense. He's back. When it comes to Kentucky, it's not going to be an easy job to just roll over this Kentucky team. And keep in mind, this isn't the same offensive line we've been dealing with from Georgia over the course of the past 5 years. They're not running the ball like they used to. 108 yards last week. Dejan Edwards is the starting running back for him. I don't see them being able to control the ball against Kentucky the way that they would probably like to. It was a 16-6 rock fight last year too. They're throwing the ball a lot more with Bobo back. And if you remember, when Mike Bobo was the offensive coordinator the last time, that was the Aaron Murray era where he set records in terms of passing yardage. I like McConkey to go over that 40.5 or the low 40s, really what we're seeing for that. I think it's time. He came back last week and looked good. I think it's showtime for that.
I'm excited to see what happens with that game. Georgia is a team. Brad, actually, when he switched his topic today, Brad was going to say,
yes,
if Georgia has another one-score game, are they undeserving of the number one overall ranking in the AP pool? I don't think that's the case. I think they have to lose the number one ranking. But I think what Eric just said is very valid. They are not the same team up front as they've been in the past. And their talent definitely, the last 2 years, they've been drained of the NFL. Everybody's gone to the NFL on their team. So they're vulnerable. They're vulnerable for sure. How about Notre Dame, Brad?
Yes.
Because it's not – we talked – how many times are they going to play an ACC team? We have to continue saying, no, it's 31 straight wins.
Yeah.
And these things. But they just continue to do it. And they covered against Duke. I owe you a pizza today. You said you had some people over. So I'm feeding the fam.
Appreciate it.
Is Notre Dame going to cover again? 6.5 now at Louisville?
So for full transparency's sake, I'm covering Notre Dame all season, week in and week out. It's tough, when you are just having to get a bet, at least one bet on a team every week. So far, we're 6-1. That's between props and against the spread.
Woo!
This week, I'm taking Notre Dame -6. And you could say they're in a tough situation, right? Playing at Duke last week, now traveling to Louisville, then having USC again the following week. That's tough for any team, no matter who it is. But what I saw from, and we know the transitive property in college football is not as strong as it is in the NFL. But what I saw from Louisville made me kind of squeamish to want to take Louisville in a look-ahead spot. Jack Plummer, I've been hyping him up under Braum. I'm like, dude, match made in heaven. Then he went out there and made me look like a fool. 3 turnover-worthy passes, terrible completion percentage under pressure. The amount of pressure that North Carolina State got on him makes me worried for when they play Notre Dame. Notre Dame's going to have a bigger, stronger, and faster front seven than North Carolina State, who lost some dudes to the NFL and through transfers. I think that Notre Dame's able to lean on them as well. Notre Dame gets their top 2 pass catchers back, both the Jadens, which helps them tremendously. And then, of course, oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. The tight end who's continuously stepping up. Is making life
Mitchell
easier.
Evans, buddy.
Thank you. Mitchell Evans, who's continuously making life easier for Sam Hartman. So I like them to cover this number. I think this is one of those games where you can overthink it and take Louisville, but I'd rather, if you're taking Louisville, take them on the money line than take them on the spread. And you can find my article on NBCSports.com.
You better find it. And I'm going to piggyback on a great point that Brad made. Both the Jadens are back. Okay, so Jaden Thomas is the primary outside wide receiver for Notre Dame. In his stead, when he was kind of banged up, you saw Tobias Merriweather. You remember Tobias Merriweather. Anybody who's watched Arrested Development remembers Tobias, the never nude. So Tobias Merriweather had sort of taken over, in terms of snap rate with the Jadens out. That being said, he didn't get the job done. Through 6 games this year, because they had a week 0. He's got 13 targets. All right. Of those 13 targets, 9 of them were catchable. He dropped 2 of them for a 22% drop rate, including an important one last game, where he only got 3 targets. He caught 0 of those targets, and he dropped 1. Game before, 1 target for 6 yards. You're just looking at somebody who now, with Jaden Thomas coming back into the mix, he's a primary outside receiver. He's not going in the slot. Like, Merriweather is an outside guy. He's listed at 32.5. They're playing a pretty darn well-coached team in Louisville, which we know that the Braun brothers are beyond reproach. They've been in the game for 20 years. I just think 32.5. Like, this is a gift. He caught 0 passes last game. He caught 1 the game before. 2 receivers back. Mitchell Evans has clearly established himself as needing a primary role in the offense. Give it to me. Just give it to me. That under Tobias Merriweather, it's a gift.
Seems like this could have been one of your best bets. If not, it was a cutoff for
this should be considered
possibly.
Yeah,
this is a good one.
It should be considered. Everything's coming together because you can look at the old snap count, but that doesn't factor in with the new Jaden Thomas game.
Yeah, well, I am cheating and have 2 best bets today. So if you do add this one, I'm not going to say no to that one. But you did start the 2 best bets earlier this season. That's your fault. I will say about this game, I lean the under, and something you guys both hit on a lot is the fronts in this game, the talent difference as well. But Notre Dame, I don't know if they're going to score as many points as people would expect against Louisville. They should score plenty of points, 30-plus points. But when you play Ohio State in a game that you guys are both at, and you saw how physical that game was, and you go on the road and play Duke, another low-scoring game with a lot of physicality up front, and now you're back on the road going to Louisville, another team that's feeling pretty good about themselves and just entered the top 25, which is a great fade spot, which is why I like Brad's pick here. So I do think it'll be a low-scoring game here. I lean the under. I may be overthinking it, and it may be as easy as both of you guys make it sound here too. But Notre Dame is definitely the right side.
I want to add one more thing there. If anybody's looking for another square, I like Jawar Jordan. He's still at 74. I like his rushing under. The number's still pretty high in a playable range just because the explosive runs that Travion Henderson had finished at 106 against Ohio State. Ultimately didn't play it. I didn't want to have multiple plays on this game, but if anybody who can't get action down on the side or total, I like Eric's play, and then I like Jordan under. Let's talk about the Big Ten Saturday night game on NBC and Peacock at 7:30. Number 2 Michigan is laying 18.5 against Minnesota. Total set at 44.5. Vaughn, I'm obviously giving you the floor here.
Yeah, best bet number 1, baby. We already know what it is. We're going for 5 straight on the show, 6 straight articles and picks overall on the opposing team total under against Michigan. This defense is serious. So serious that in the first 55 minutes of every single game this year, they have allowed a total of 1 touchdown. And that's great when you're trying to sweat out some team total unders. But Minnesota's offense, while they've looked good the past 2 weeks against incompetent opponents like Northwestern and Louisiana Lafayette, they scored 34 and 35 on them. In 2 games they lost this year, they had 13 points against North Carolina and 13 points against Rutgers. I would say Michigan's a step up. And these 2 teams haven't saw each other since 2020 COVID year. So I'm loving everything I've seen from Michigan. I am rallying and saying that Michigan is my team. They are my new North Texas, baby. So, yeah, best bet number 1, Minnesota team total under 13.5.
Every year I put a bet on Alabama to win the national championship. I didn't do it this year, preseason, just because it's just improbable to be that young and be successful. I did take Michigan. And as the weeks go on, it looks better. And what I also did take was I did take your team total. Literally the second we recorded, I locked it in. Also what I took in my sleeper play, if anybody wants to use it, use promo code Brad Thomas. Obviously you get up to $100, but my sleeper play for the second leg, I used Roman Wilson to score a touchdown. I added him on Prize Picks as well. Dude has 8 touchdowns so far this season. He is the number 1 dude on that team.
Did you see the touchdown he had last week against Nebraska?
Yeah.
I mean, it was insane.
Dude's a baller. His touchdown in week 1 was insane too. Like, dude's such a baller. So, Eric, take away with your favorite prop from the game.
Well, first off, I respectfully disagree that you can't be that young and successful. I'm with a couple of sub 30-year-olds here on this, and you two are pretty darn successful in my eyes. That being said, yeah, I love Roman Wilson. If those of us watching who go back to last season, I had a lot of Roman Wilson overs. They were putting him at like 21, 24 and a half yards, even though it wasn't the same team, and you had more. Dude, he was hitting that week in, week out. And now they set him at, in the mid 50s, and he hits it week in, week out. Love Roman Wilson, even though they don't even throw the ball that much. Yeah. That being said, over to Donovan Edwards for Michigan. He's listed at 49 and a half rushing yards. I'm going under on that. It's a line he's gone under 4 out of 5 games this season. The reason why is he's a passing down back, and he is the clear secondary option to Blake Corum. Not just that, if you dig into the deep numbers, he's averaging under 2.5 yards after contact. He's getting what's blocked. His elusiveness rating is in the bottom 100. It's like out of 123 rushers that have had at least 45 carries, he's below 100. So when I'm looking at evaluation of running backs, a lot of it has to do with what they can get that isn't blocked for them. And Donovan Edwards is simply not that elusive. So sure, can Michigan get what is blocked? Yeah, but he's not going to get the kind of time because he's got Blake Corum in front of him, and they're going to be beaten up on Minnesota. So he has to have. It's not a running back situation here, and that's what people have to understand. It is a clear delineated 1 and 2, and Donovan Edwards is clear that number 2, more effective in the passing game. Last week against Nebraska, it was the first time he's had, over 12 carries this season. He had 14 carries. He went for 48 yards. Okay. That's why it's set at 49 and a half. Previous game against Rutgers, he got 6 for 13. Okay. If they're not going to get a blowout game script, which sure, I mean, they should be able to move the ball against Minnesota, but it's going to have to be extremely out of hand in order for him to even get to sniff this. I just can't see it happening. I'm going to take the under on Donovan Edwards.
Nice. I'll tell that. Listen, everyone, check out NBC Sports YouTube short section to see myself, Vaughn, and Eric Starr in our new Betting Big segments, where we break down our favorite Big Ten and Pac-12 bets every single week, all season long. Let's get into our best bets segment. I'm 4-2. I'm pretty excited about this. I talked about it already. Mine is Texas -5. I planted my flag on that a while ago. The second it dropped from 6 to 5, I was locked in. Go ahead and give us your Vaughn.
Yeah, as I said, Minnesota is going to be my best bet number 1. I'm trying to catch Brad on this season here. I'm 4-3, so I'm 1 game behind you. Here's my chance. And then best bet number 2, I'm really excited about. We're rolling with another team total.
We'll get back.
He snuck out the
classic Vaughn.
Did you guys lose me there for a
second?
All right,
you're back, baby.
It's your internet again, Vaughn.
Oh, yeah, that's Pennsylvania. Upgraded, and it still sucks. How about that? Florida's team total over 34.5. We're looking for another one to sneak out here, Brad. We got the 19.5 for Nebraska last night, but Vanderbilt, they lost 4 straight games. In those games, they've allowed 36, 40, 45, and 38 points for 39.7. They've been terrible in the first half of those games. Florida got smacked up by Kentucky on the road. They're coming home now, and they're not just coming home. It's a homecoming.
Yeah.
Okay. The crowd said, the SID said, wear blue. Everybody wear blue to this game and get right. And this is the best team to get right against. And last thing I'll say before I pass the buck here to my friend Eric, Florida's last 5 wins against Vanderbilt, they've scored 42, 38, 56, 37, and 38. They've hit this all 5 times in their last 5 wins. Give me the Gators team total over, baby. Don't hate the spread either. What you got, Eric?
Don't hate the player, hate the game, right? Trey Harris, we already talked about one of my best bets, David Cross's character, Tobias, from Arrested Development. Trey Harris, wide receiver. Ole Miss, they're playing Arkansas. Ooh, Arkansas. Oh, they're so good to us. They have been very, very kind to us. One of the worst passing defenses, I would say, in the entire Power 5. And now they're going up against an Ole Miss team that we saw last week went nuclear against LSU. I don't see much difference here in terms of what they're going to be able to do. Sure, when they played Alabama, were they stonewalled? Absolutely. Hey, that's Alabama. This is Arkansas, and this is Trey Harris at 63.5 yards. Keep in mind, Trey Harris was incredible last year at Louisiana Tech, over 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
Transfers over, and everybody thought it was going to be Zachary Franklin coming over from UTSA, who that team has proved to be a fraud. It's Trey Harris. It was Trey Harris all along. Comes out week 1 against Mercer, 6 of 8, 133 and 4 touchdowns. Very next game against Tulane, first quarter, 2 passes, 55 yards, catches a 31-yard touchdown, and gets hurt right after. Doesn't play. Comes back against Alabama, gets his feet wet. Only has 2 targets. He doesn't really play that much. That's really like a 2-week absence. But last week against LSU, 14 targets.
Yeah.
Catches 8 for $153 and a touchdown with a 56-yarder. Now they're going up against Arkansas. Oh, man. 63.5 yards for Trey Harris. That's shameful. This is the books going and looking and said, oh, well, you didn't have a catch against Alabama. Oh, well, look, he only 55 yards against Tulane. He got hurt in the first quarter. Okay? Give me Trey Harris over 63.5. This is going over in the first half. Done. Lock it up. And take an alt line if you can find it.
Let's talk to people's parlay because I'm ready to cash this plus 286 bet. My first leg, Notre Dame. You guys know why I like Notre Dame there. Vaughn, go ahead and give me yours.
Yeah, we're going to go with Fresno State, my friend. They've actually won 14 straight games dating back to October 15th of last year, almost a full entire calendar year. They're on the road at Wyoming, who they've beat 30-0 and 17-0 in the last 2 seasons since COVID. So Wyoming hasn't scored a point. Their team totals at 17.5. I might get on that later, gentlemen, but that's something to talk about later on. So Fresno State money line, they're going to win.
This is the one where my wife is opposing Mr. Eric Froton. So go ahead and tell me what you like, and we'll see if you're going to be buying my wife pizza.
He loves Boston College, man.
Oh, man. Come on, man. You know I'm a Boston guy. You know that, but this is rooted in fact. Okay, this is it. This is rooted. This isn't the love. This is rooted in logic. Okay, look at 2 weeks ago. Florida State. BC played them to the bone, 31-29. And the reason why is they got rid of Emory Moorhead. Okay. Yeah. Emory Moorhead looked competent after they took over for Phil Dracovic last year, who's now a tight end for Pitt, which, I mean, I could have told you that.
Is he a tight end?
Oh, he switched to tight end. Yeah. And it's Frank Signetti's fault because he was the OC at Boston College last year. He brought Dracovic over to Pitt, and now he's a tight end. Bro, you had 2 years with him at BC, and you bring him over to Pitt, and now you just figured it out? Your fault, Frank Signetti. Your fault.
He's an IUP guy. That's where I went to college.
You have a cross.
We're a party school. We're a party school.
Oh, it's a party school. But it ain't a party in that backfield. Okay? It was it was a party for the defense in the backfield. Yeah. Phil Dracovic. It's over. That being said, Thomas Castellanos, UCF, Brad, transfer, okay, comes in and takes over for Emory Moorhead, where they had a pretty spirited battle in terms of the, in the preseason. Clearly the better option here. He goes 20 of 33, 305, and a touchdown against Florida State. Like, bro, we've seen that Florida State defense. You got Jared Verse breathing down his neck.
Yeah.
The guy is actually doing a good job handling pressure, and he runs 16 carries for 95 yards, 10 for 49, 16 for 78 last game where they beat UVA. Are they great? No. But we have a competent signal caller here, and it's made a big difference. NIU, they lost NIU because they had Moorhead in there. With Castellanos at the helm, this is a better team. It's a more experienced line. They've come together. Week 6, I think it's time. I think they're going to handle it, Army. We're even getting points. I mean, if you want to go with a 142 plus that you're getting by taking the money line, that's fine. But give me Boston College. They're going to bring me to the promised land.
Bro, is your wife on the money line or the spread here?
She's on -2.5.
Then I am too. Plus 2.5. Me and Mrs. Thomas. Let's go.
All right, pizza bet it is. Nice. Yeah. Let's go.
I hope she's watching.
She's definitely watching. All right, so listen, before we get to the breakdowns of the other games, I want to tell you guys, lineups just became announced for Crystal Palace versus Nottingham Forest in the Premier League. Edward,
what is Robin Hood playing?
Listen, you have to hear this. You have to hear this.
What the hell is Nottingham Forest?
This is really important. It's really important. Edward wasn't supposed to play. He's playing. Take his 3+ shots for plus money. The line's wrong because they didn't think he was going to play or he was going to play and come off the bench. Take his 3 shots. No Eze, no Elise. All right, but listen, if you're looking for NFL betting
Crystal
content, then you have the dream duo right in front of you. Vaughn and myself got you covered with spreads, picks, and player props all season long on NBCSports.com and on our X accounts at Mr. Brad Thomas, at V Money Sports, and follow Eric at CF Froton. Let's get to this game. This line has plummeted down. I was going the right way for me to bet it, and then went the opposite way. Maryland at Ohio State. Line set at 17.5, with Ohio State being the favorite. Total set at 56.5. I said if this line gets to 21, it got to 20.5, I was going to put multiple units on Maryland. Obviously, everyone agreed and plummeted down. I took Cade Stover over 35.5 receiving yards. He's hit this number in every game but one, excuse me. Ryan Day likes to game plan for big games. You guys better believe that this is a big game for Ohio State, because this is a barometer of, can their defense outlast an explosive offense? I do lean Maryland here, but 17 is too short for me.
Yeah, I can't get behind either team in this game, to be honest with you. I think that given that we talked about this earlier in the week on betting big, Brad, but Ohio State's averaged 57 points per game in the last 8 meetings with Maryland. The total's 56.5. Everything's too fishy for me to even touch here. So I'll rely on the props with you guys. Eric, what do you got for this game?
Yeah, you got to keep in mind that last year, this is a competitive game with Maryland. They were able to move the ball. Yeah, very competitive. That was even, I think they played them right before Michigan too. I think there was that trap game situation, and that was a bad spot for them. That being said, like Roman Hemby, I don't have a heavy, but man, I looked at Roman Hemby at 40.5 rushing yards. He has not been very effective, and they've been certainly leaning towards the pass over the past few games. He didn't come close. He didn't cross 24 in the previous 2. He just eclipsed that 40-yard mark against an inferior opponent, but now they're over there against Ohio State. If OSU is able to score, which I think they will, as you kind of alluded to, I think they'll kind of get themselves in gear a little bit after that tough slog that Brad and I watched in person at Notre Dame. I do think they'll be able to gas it up a little bit. I like Brad's play at Cade Stover, but if they get out of that run script for Maryland, that's bad news for Hemby. It's real bad news. I think it's probably a good thing for his receiving over. I would be a little slanted towards it, but man, I lean under on that 40.5 for Hemby. And keep in mind, Trevion Henderson was just announced to be out, which, Brad, as you know, last time Trevion Henderson stepped on a field, we were watching him, and we were right there on the field. Yeah. After Chip Traynham punched in that last second touchdown against Notre Dame, if you remember correctly in our video, Brad, I literally went over and dapped Trevion Henderson as I'm filming everything on the field. So he ran over, he was involved in that. He dapped everybody up, and he's coming back, and he's holding his helmet, and he's in good spirits, and he's bouncing around. That was the last play of a game that he's been involved in. He wasn't in on that play. He was training him, but dude, he didn't look injured to me on that.
Me either.
You know what I'm saying? We saw him right there. I was very surprised to hear that he was out, and I wonder if that's like a practice injury or what happened to him. Maybe a shoulder, because I know his legs look good. His legs are just fine running over there to go and celebrate that touchdown. So that's something to monitor.
I am on the over for anybody wondering, but the over moved, obviously. We talked about it in betting big, but I don't give out totals that move 2 points. Like, that's just not my MO. Eric, let's go to the next game. Alabama Roll Tide at Texas A&M, total set at 46. Alabama 2.5-point favorite. I like Alabama today. I'm not gonna trust Max Johnson. I didn't put a bet in this. I tried to do my best and not. Please say you're writing over 46.5 rushing yards. Oh, passing. Wait, Eric, hold on. Okay, before Eric, I don't want to spoil Eric's thing, but my dad is like the most realistic sports fan ever. My dad will tell you when he hates something, when he loves something, unbiased. My dad calls me before we get on the show and goes, "This is a breakout game for Milroe. Milroe has a massive game this week." Go ahead, Eric. Go ahead. Eric, tell me your play, because it's a segue.
Eric did that last year against
dude, it's clear. First off, I love your old man, and you know that, Brad. Yeah. I hope he's watching. Mr. Thomas.
Sorry, Mr. Thomas. I didn't mean what I just said.
Yeah, me and the bride apparently weren't simpatico, Mr. Thomas. But me and Mr. Thomas were boys. We are kindred spirits here. I love you, Mr. Thomas. That being said, he's right. He's right. Because when Jalen Milroe doesn't clear 197.5 passing yards? Middle Tennessee. and a decrepit Mississippi State team that they beat 40-70, beat the doors off them. He only threw 12 passes last game, Milroe. 12 last week. He completed 10. 16 and a half, per 164 he went for last game. 16.4 yards per completion, okay? But you look at what they did against Texas. Look what they did against Mississippi. In more competitive games, they can't just run the ball down the other team's throat. They have to game plan a little bit, right? Texas lost 24-34, heavy pass script, 255 he went for and 2 touchdowns. Hey, he threw 2 interceptions. I don't care. Mississippi, in a pretty slow, not a high-scoring game, 24-10, he completed 17-21 for 225, okay? Is he going to throw an interception? Yeah, I don't care. Those are 2 easy overs in competitive games. Here we are, again, Texas A&M, competitive game. I have concerns about, him going over on the rushing yards. We talked to our manager, Brian, about that in terms of earlier in the season. I understand, the 46.5 rushing, but that's a good defensive line. You know what I mean? And there will be pressure. He hasn't proven that he can handle pressure particularly well when it comes to, he's got like 30% pressure to sack rate. I like the over 197.5 passing yards. I think he's hitting that. Competitive games, they're going to have to throw. They can't just run on Texas A&M willy-nilly.
Yeah, I love that. Go ahead, Vaughn.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a great game. We definitely saw some rumors swirling around about Jalen Milroe possibly hurting his hamstring in practice. The line moved all around. People were debating it. Brad and I texted about it. Brad said only A&M places are reporting that, and I said I did notice that as well. They said Milroe's fine. Regardless, I think both defenses can outplay the opposing quarterbacks in today's game. I think there'll be turnovers. I think it'll be nitty-gritty. And I think when you look at when both teams win, they played very well, holding opponents to 22 or less for Alabama's 4 wins, 17 or less in A&M's 4 wins. But the one thing I looked at was the havoc rate. That really made me like the under a lot more because Alabama obviously has owned A&M. 9 of the last 10 games they've won. The one loss was at the 12th man the last time they went there. A&M has the number 1 havoc rate created, while Alabama's offense allows 111th to them out of 131 schools. So A&M should get pressure. That probably helps Eric, your prop, and Miller having to throw because he will be forced to. So I do like the under in this game. I think we see a very low-scoring, possibly boring game. But, Brad, I wouldn't do it to you. I couldn't take Alabama today. I don't want to curse them.
No, that's cool, dude. I'm going to bet on them, just have my fun. Like I said, my buddy's in town, so we're going to be watching the game, eating pizza and smoked sausages. Let's get to UTSA. Vaughn, actually, we'll skip that and come back for when you get back. Let's talk about Eric, give us some ladders. Vaughn's going to step out real quick. Give a couple ladders, and then we'll get back to Vaughn.
Oh, it would be my pleasure, as you guys well know. We're going to go with the aforementioned Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, okay, comes in the season. Is it going to be Spencer Sanders, who's transferring in from Oklahoma State? Some people, for some reason, thought that might actually be a thing. Walker Howard transfers over, a former 5-star from LSU, because he got passed over by Garrett Nussmeier. Is he going to possibly be a factor? No. It was always going to be Jackson Dart's gig. He's been Lane Kiffin's boy since back at USC, and he followed him there. That was going to happen. Last week against LSU, 26 completions, threw 39 passes, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns. Like, he could do no wrong. The only game he's really had that's been down was just that Alabama game, which I can't fault him for having a bad game against Alabama. If you're going to consider that the baseline for Mr. Dart, then I don't think that's particularly fair. And considering the fact that, again, they're playing Arkansas, where they're going to have to – this is going to be another competitive contest. Ole Miss's defense is not that great, as we know. LSU put up 49 on them. Georgia Tech put up 23. While they're okay, this is going to be a heavy pass script. He is at 325 plus, is plus 320. That may have even gone up a little bit since then. Plus 330, excuse me. I like that. Also, next, Tyler Van Dyke. As anybody who follows me on the X knows, I have 18 college fantasy shares of Tyler Van Dyke and C2C. I knew this was coming. I knew once the Josh Gaddis era ended and you got back to a more modern thinking offense, much like they had in 2021 with Rhett Lashley. Now you have Shannon Dawson coming over from Houston, and the results have been as expected. Van Dyke's been phenomenal. The guy's got a huge arm. He tests windows. He throws all three sides of the field. He can throw deep. I think he can do everything. I love Van Dyke. The only thing you can really knock on him is his mobility. But, man, at 325 plus against Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech's defense is terrible, and Haynes King is really good, who just transferred over from Texas A&M. I love the alt line 325 plus on Tyler Van Dyke. If you want to go 300 plus and get 2 times money, I love that as well. I don't think you're going to go wrong with it. And if you're going to go with something that's a little bit more, with a little bit more juice, you have Haynes King on the other side there. I do like Miami's D, but man, Haynes King's been great. Georgia Tech is in a different place than they were during the Jeff Collins era, and you get plus 550 out of that for him. And then lastly, let's go to our boy, and this is just put in the chat, and it should be mentioned, Trey Harris's alt line, according to our boy Shrank, and he just checked it, 110 yards is plus 550. Yeah, give it to me. Give it to me. Dart and Trey Harris, a little combo. I think you're going to see a lot of them today. Love both of those. Huge returns to 5.5 to 1.
You guys are going to rob the books today. I feel it. UTSA at Temple. V-Money, tell me what you like about this game.
We can't hear you, Vaughn.
I think I was muted. I'm letting you guys do your thing. But
there we go.
I was about to talk smack on Eric and saying I'm disappointed how he was talking some smack on UTSA, saying how miserable they are because this team,
they're overrated.
This team is going to go on a run similar to how we loved San Diego State, Fresno State, North Texas. Listen to their schedule starting today: Temple, UAB, FAU, East Carolina, North Texas, Rice, South Florida, and Tulane. Sounds like a bunch of wins up until the Tulane game, right? That's how I feel about this team. But this is a great matchup because not only do we get Frank Harris back, who he's been out for 2 games. He needed a rest after his start to his season. Temple was a great get-right game. They've lost all 3 of their games by 29, 22, and 34. But that's not even where I'm going. I'm going first half. Roadrunners get out to a nice lead because Temple has been outscored 79 to 20 in the first half of games this year. All right. And in their 3 losses, they have been absolutely terrible. So allowing 42 points per game. Give me UTSA first half -7. The best line you'll find is on MGM, which is -115. Everywhere else is 7.5, I found, which I still think is playable, but obviously not for a full unit.
Vaughn, I'm going right back to you because I need you to break down this game for me. I was so torn. Washington State at UCLA. UCLA laying 3.5 points, total set at 59.5. What do you like in this one?
Yeah, I think this is easy. And anyone that follows college basketball, you know exactly what I'm about to say with this game. And anybody that doesn't, I'm playing UCLA. One big reason why is Washington State's number 13 overall. They're on the road and they're underdogs against a team that's not ranked at home. That is a big indicator to make the public want to buy into Washington State because Washington State is 5-0. They have the better quarterback, arguably the better team overall, which I'm not going to disagree with. But on certain days, you know teams are going to lose. And on the road, this is a tough spot for the Cougars in general. UCLA as a freshman quarterback, you don't know what to expect as much in Dante Moore. 8 touchdowns and 2 picks, but big playability from UCLA, Eric. 3 touchdown passes of 62 or more yards from UCLA this year. They had the 6th fewest trips to the red zone, only 13 trips to the red zone because they score all their points outside the red zone with big plays. This could be a shootout. It has been historically when they meet up, but I think UCLA is undoubtedly the right side today, so I'm taking them on the spread. Tell me why I'm wrong. Tell me why I'm wrong.
Don't do that to yourselves,
please.
Everybody. Just
please.
Don't do that to yourselves, okay?
Because UCLA is so terrible. There's no way they should be laying points, right?
We don't know who this UCLA team is. They beat Coastal Carolina, a decrepit San Diego State team, and NC Central, okay? Then they go and they play Utah with Nate Johnson at the helm, and Utah houses them. 5% win expectancy. They could barely do anything against that Utah defense. Now you're playing Wazoo, all right? with Cam Ward, with Ben Arbuckle running that offense. Thank God Eric Morris is gone because they aren't playing games. They went out and they took care of Oregon State. They took care of Wisconsin. What is UCLA's signature win? Coastal Carolina.
This is going to be the one.
You pick your win.
This is the one. That's why they're favored.
Plus 3.5. You give it to me. You give me the plus 3.5, or you take the plus 142, and you win. You listen to Vaughn, you lose. Pizza bet. I do roast beef because I don't do carbs. We all know what kind of great shape Froton is in. Roast beef for me. Pizza for Vaughn. Done.
I'm all about that.
I've seen conflicting reports, but I did see a report 15 minutes ago that he is doubtful, expected to be out this week.
Who is he?
Lincoln Victor. I put it on the screen. My bad.
Lincoln Victor. Oh, he's gone. Yeah, I wouldn't expect him to go. If you're sitting there for DFS purposes, Carlos Hernandez took 80% of the snaps in the slot last week. I would take a look at him. If he's listed, you could probably get him. I'd be in for that too, depending on what the books put out as the game gets closer to kickoff.
Cool, Eric. Go ahead and run through a couple bets because we're up against the wall.
Yes, we are. Omarion Hampton, running back, UNC versus Syracuse. Dude, the Syracuse team has been pretty darn good this year. 70.5 rushing yards. Hampton's only cleared that once this year, and it's because he went for 237, so like he had one nuclear performance, but then since then, just kind of pedestrian, and keep in mind when he did that, his understarter, his sort of starter, British Brooks was hurt. Brooks is back. He's getting, he got 8 carries to Hampton's 18 last game, but even with 18 carries, you get 66 yards. The game before, against Minnesota, 13 for 46. South Carolina, 16 for 37. Only time he clears it against Appy, give me the under on him. As discussed, I got a good one I like here, and it's kind of outside the box, but we mentioned Wisconsin. Gavin Winsat, quarterback, Rutgers, at Wisconsin. All my Jersey boys out there, they know. He's set at 130.5 passing yards right now. He's cleared that in every game except for one, and the one game that he didn't, it was sort of extenuating circumstances. Look at last game, okay? Wagner, he clears it 146, but then at Michigan, he cleared it. He hit 180 against Michigan, 198 Temple, Northwestern 163. The only one he goes under was Virginia Tech, and that's because they ran all over them 35-16. Literally, Virginia Tech could not stop Kyle Monangai when Kyle Monangai went for 200 yards. So that's kind of an outlier. They're not running for 200 yards against Wisconsin. They're going to be in a pass script. They're going to be down. Oh my God, 130.5. Like, out of principle, you literally have to take that. Like, I'd be, you're taunting us now at putting the line that low. So I like that. And then last, we're going to go with Baylor wide receiver Hal Presley. For those Stanley Kubrick fans out there, close the pod bay door, Hal. Yes, we will indeed do that. 2001, A Space Odyssey. Last 3 games for Hal. 3 out of 3 last game, 26 yards. His ADOT is ridiculously low. 3 out of 4 for 17 against Texas. Didn't catch a single pass against LIU. All right. I'm not particularly convinced that he is going to be involved. I like Ketron Jackson. All right. I think he's been great. Obviously, Monterey Baldwin came in and is the most dynamic weapon. You're talking about the number 3 option in this Baylor Bears passing offense. 33.5. I don't think he gets enough to justify that, especially against Texas Tech team that has really been running the ball extremely well, is controlling the clock. I don't see that happening for Baylor.
All right, do you have any more? First, let me explain my outburst because I texted Eric and I said, "Oh my God, I'm super excited." I was like, "We have to take Wimsatt. His number is like 130. They're begging us to take it," and then I didn't get a response, and I was like, "Damn, does that mean he hates it?"
I'm sorry. I'm so
and so
sorry.
He loves it up here. I'm excited. No, it's so cool. It's so cool.
I've been touring New England the past couple of days with my lady. I'm sorry.
I put a little bit on it. Hey, but listen, let's send everyone off so they can watch these great games. First and foremost, thank you to BetMGM. Thank you to everyone watching. See you guys next week. For Vaughn Dalzell, Eric Froton, I'm Brad Thomas. Best of luck.